Good afternoon. My name is Olga Atamanova, and I want to thank everybody who joined us. Ukraine Media Center, Ukrinform, continues its operation in its day 261 of the heroic resistance of the Ukrainian people. And now all of us Ukrainians, not only us, but the whole world, observes the advance of our armed forces in Kherson region. And now we will have Serhii Khlan, deputy of the Kherson Regional Council, joining us online. Mr. Serhii, good afternoon. Good afternoon. We are from Ukraine. Kherson region is Ukraine. Glory to Ukraine. Glory to the heroes. Mr. Serhii, now the events are unfolding in a quite a dynamic way. Today we've already seen the pictures with the flag of Ukraine in the center of Kherson. Can you please tell us something about that? Yes, that's true. In the center of Kherson, near the building of the municipal council, our boys, our resistance movement posted our flag, not on top of it, but they folded the monument with the flag. But in the same way, it was the movement of resistance who removed the Russian flags from the administrations as soon as the Russians were fleeing. So now we're seeing the history of our flag appearing in all the buildings in Kherson, something that we were dreaming about from the very first days of occupation. Today it starts coming true. We see the Ukrainian flags appearing in mass all over the place. It's true, our armed forces under unimaginable pressure, they pressed the large fraction of Russians who were fleeing like rats to the left bank of the Dnieper. They were running across the pontoon bridges constructed under Antonovsky Bridge. They were trying to evacuate their material. A lot of material was left behind. A lot of them drowned, but I could say good riddance. So the occupation of the right bank of Kherson region, there's still a lot of work as to the clearing, demining, still a lot of work to be done, because we understand that the occupiers, while withdrawing, they were blowing up the Kherson thermal power plant and distribution power station and the TV tower. They destroyed the electric station near the TV tower, so it will all have to be reconstructed, rebuilt. But the first things first, we have to do the deoccupation, because a large fraction of Russians didn't make it across the Dnieper. They get themselves redressed in civil and try to hide. They most likely will prepare some acts of sabotage around Kherson. There's still a lot of work ahead of us, but what's the key point is that their main forces are destroyed or thrown out of Kherson, and some part of them, they fled to the left bank and sit in those fortifications they constructed earlier. We've seen the reports from the local population yesterday that the Russians flee with the boats, and we've seen the videos in the propaganda sources that they flee by foot to the other bank of Dnieper. Do they make it? And is it possible that now did we make their withdrawal impossible? Well, you know, all night long, all the way up to the 6 o'clock, there were very powerful explosions near the Antonovsky Bridge. The earth was trembling, and it was the destruction of the Russians who were trying to cross the river, because, you know, today this is second second symbol of Kherson is the Dnieper crayfish. The first symbol is the watermelon, but the second will be crayfish. They will grow big this year, but we don't have to eat them because they fed on rushes. Let's wait until the next year. So in the same way, today we had reports of Russians trying to flee by all means possible, because really a very large fraction of Russians didn't make it to the left bank. They were running all sides from our artillery, working on the Antonovsky Bridge and all the river crossings near Kakhovka as well. As to the Antonovsky Bridge, in the morning we've seen pictures and videos that the bridge was already destroyed by Russians because they reported it themselves. What's the situation? What do you know? Yes, the occupiers they withdrew their main forces. They detonated the sections of the bridge with the barges underneath it. So they even made the pedestrian crossing impossible across the bridge. But we will rebuild it, we will reconstruct it, just as well as all other bridges after the occupation of the region in general. It will be some work to be done in future, but you understand that they did not only detonate the Antonovsky Bridge, they blew up all the bridges when they were leaving the right bank of Kherson region under the pressure of our armed forces. While fleeing, they were blowing up everything that could deter the advance, the pressure of our armed forces, but it never helped them. We know that they detonated almost all the bridge in the right bank of Kherson region, but we still don't have a confirmation of the road over the Kakhovka hydraulic power plant dam being detonated, but no full confirmation about that. We know that Russians inflicted strikes on Mykolaiv this morning. We have information about 6 people dead due to the strikes, so that they hit the apartment building just like usual in their manner. Do we understand that the movement of the troops will decrease the pressure on Mykolaiv and Mykolaiv region, the fire pressure on Mykolaiv and Mykolaiv region in general? Well, yeah, today it's a tragic case when the rocket hit the apartment block, and there are victims in Ingulsky district of Mykolaiv in the Miru Avenue, the Avenue of Peace. It's a tragedy. Do I hope that these shellings will decrease? Well, we have to understand that the occupiers hit Mykolaiv with S-300 systems from the left bank. They were doing it from Skadovsky and Kakhovsky regions, but the fact that our armed forces took control over the right bank part of Kherson region means that we already can substantially hold under fire control all the left bank of Kherson River and all the way to the Crimean neck. We can gain fire control of the movement of the enemy, all the roads. So I hope that with the help of our intelligence and artillery, we will do the impossible. We will make it impossible for them to shell both Mykolaiv and Kherson regions as well. Dear colleagues, your questions, please. Good afternoon, Irina Mamchur, Ukrinform. I have a couple of questions. First, I would like to specify the bridge across the Kakhovka hydraulic power plant dam bridge. Do we have some specific information about that? There is no confirmed information about that, but there are rumors about the explosions which happened there, and that's the information from the Russians media, but we understand we cannot trust them. So far, the information is being double-checked. Okay, so another question. Do we know anything about what's going on the left bank of Dnieper? We know that there are fortifications and reinforcements of the enemy. What's going on in Kakhovka and Novakakhovka? Do we know about any movement of artillery material from Crimea, for example? Do we have any information like that, something that we can disclose at the moment? Previously, like 3 or 4 days before, the occupiers moved a part of the mobilized troops who were at the battle, in the battle coordination in Henichesk. Previously, occupiers brought almost all the military personnel from there and moved them to all those fortifications that they built along the left bank of Dnieper. They said that it was like another shipment of the mobilized personnel should be coming from Henichesk and Arabatska Spit. If they arrived, we don't know yet, but those who were there, they are currently at the left bank of Dnieper. Thank you. May I ask another one? Can you please tell us what's the situation in the recently liberated villages? What's the humanitarian situation and what's the situation in general? How people meet the armed forces in the north of Kherson region? The villages which were liberated previously within the first days of advance, when we pushed through the first line of defense of the Russians, the stabilization measures are in place there with the help of the United Nations, who allocated funds and construction materials for reconstruction and rebuilding. Obviously, that construction materials aid is not enough, so we need more construction materials for the people to rebuild, like to rebuild their roofs and to spend winter in a normal way. So the works are underway, and the humanitarian funds, charity funds help with the military administration and government administration. We're about to reestablish power supply, cell communications. So, and in those villages liberated during the last 2 days, it's almost the whole right bank. There are still clearing operations going on there, and we see in the pictures of our military the hanging of Ukrainian flags, that the clearing is over, but we still expect for the official confirmation from the general staff. Thank you. Thank you. Another question, if I may, about Kherson. Can you please tell us what's the situation? Do we know what's the situation in Kherson? Is there power supply, any communication at all? We've seen messages that the civil people in Kherson are standing in lines for water, for bread. How safe is that? Can you advise the civilians in Kherson? Is there a threat, a risk of them getting getting them involved in battle, in firefights, or under shellings? Thank you. There are still clearing operations in Kherson. Meanwhile, the civilians should better stay at home because the situation is difficult with the fuel, with the bread. There is no power supply. It will be 1 week soon without power supply, and the same situation with the bread, because for the bakeries to operate, they need power supply. And what's being manufactured with the help of diesel generators is not enough, so the humanitarian situation is really complicated, and the occupiers artificially created. They moved the situation to the verge. But now that Kherson is almost under control of the armed forces, there are still clearing operations in place, and the civilians better stay at homes during that time, unfortunately, there is no communication. Sometimes there is mobile internet, but the signal is so weak that only the messages go through. You cannot like talk to anybody in Kherson for the second day. We only communicate through very short messages, and they are infrequent because this mobile internet is very weak.
Good morning, sir. Thank you for your words. Lorenzo Cremonesi from Italia, Corriere della Sera from Milano. Sir, first of all, till yesterday we were told by officials and military experts that would have taken 3-4 weeks for the liberation of the city, the full liberation of Kherson would be impossible to enter. But if we listen to your word, it looks like it's much quicker. So first of all, when you think we'll be able to say that no Russian troops are anymore in Kherson, I mean on the west side of the river? And secondly, what is the evaluation at the moment? More or less, how many Russian troops are still there? Because if I listen to you, it looks like in the night everybody escaped. Can you be more precise?
Well, that's right. It was considered that the occupation of the right bank of Dnieper will take longer, but under the pressure of our armed forces, we've seen the total fleeing of Russian forces, and after them fleeing, we've seen this final point in this withdrawal. And as of today, we only can assess by the fact that the Russians reported themselves that they completed the withdrawal of all the troops from the right bank of Dnieper and the city of Kherson itself. We understand that there is a fracture of Russians who remained there, who didn't make it to the left bank, who get themselves redressed in civil clothing, and they dissipated around Kherson city and the right bank, but we don't understand the exact number of these people. We will only be able to bring up the official figure after it will be announced by the command of the armed forces of Ukraine, which will happen only after the complete clearing of the area, because we have information that those who get redressed in civil clothing, they are looking for the ways to cross the Dnieper in order to get to the left bank. So some of them will be taken as the prisoners of war, some of them will be liquidated during the clearing operations in the right bank of Kherson region. After the completion of these clearing operations, we will have the official figure brought up by the armed forces, and we will be able to say that it's cleared in full from the enemy and it's fully liberated. Thank you.
You are an officer from the area, you maybe can give us an idea. So instead of the 3 or 4 weeks we were told yesterday, what will be 2-3 days before you can say that Kherson is really liberated? What is your assessment? Can we say 3-4 days?
Well, usually clearing takes about 1 week. Thank you. Friends, any more questions?
Ще одне питання, пане Сергію.
Sorry, sir. Then when do you think journalists will be allowed to enter? When do you think we journalists will be allowed to visit the city? What is your assessment?
Пане Сергію, ми розуміємо, що
Mr. Serhii, we understand that it will be your subjective opinion. We understand that all the decisions are being taken by our armed forces, but maybe you have some forecast in this regard. Well, you know, I hope that this month you will be able to get to Kherson. Thank you, sir. Thank you for this, for your participation and such an inspiring information for all of us. I will remind you we had Serhii Khlan joining us, the Deputy of Kherson Regional Council. Dear colleagues, our next briefing is at 1400. We will have Pavlo Kirilenko, the military governor of Donetsk region, joining us, and we will talk about the situation in Donetsk region. So bear with us. Glory to Ukraine.